Welcome to the Self Reflections podcast, where real reflections are shared by real people. Today's episode promises to be an eye-opening exploration of empowerment, authenticity, and feminine energy. Our guest, Hilary Burton from Arizona in the US, has journeyed from being an occupational therapist to professional dominatrix, redefining what it means to embrace feminine power. Thank you for joining me on this episode, Hilary.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Hilary, you have such a unique journey from being an OT, occupational therapist, to becoming a professional dominatrix. Can you share with us a little bit about how this path unfolded and what initially drew you to this line of work?
Yeah, so I've been an occupational therapist for about 10 years. And the crazy thing is I started out in pediatrics, so working with kiddos with special needs. And I feel like our businesses follow our personal journey. And so I had my career in pediatrics, and then I really got into fitness personally. So fitness and nutrition and wellness. And so I realized how much of an impact that had on my life. So I incorporated that into my practice for therapy. And so I was doing fitness-based therapy for kids. And then I ended up working with the kiddos' moms. And so then we're doing fitness and nutrition coaching. And I realized how much I love working with women. I'm like, okay, I love what I do as a pediatric therapist, but helping women is truly my passion. And so at that time, I was going through my dominatrix journey, a spiritual journey, and figuring out how much there really is to feminine and sensual energetics. And so then everything I was doing shifted over to helping women connect to their feminine and sensual energy and incorporating all the cool things that I have learned as a dominatrix.
Oh, that's so empowering and so wonderful too, to be able to dabble into so many different areas of interest in one lifetime, right?
I say this all the time. I feel like I live a lifetime in a year. Like the amount that I change and evolve in a year is like most people's lifetimes. And it's so cool. There's so much freedom in that, right? Just to be able to ease and flow and not resist the change.
No, I love that. How did stepping into the role of dominatrix influence your perception of like feminine power and authenticity? Because that in itself is such a vast area that would ignite that in someone.
It does. And especially here in the US, I mean, it's worldwide, but our culture is so centered around women serving men, and our lives are centered around men and what we can do for them. And so we lose ourselves and we're drained and we're exhausted, and we don't prioritize our self-care. We don't, value ourselves. And so stepping into the role where the masculine is coming to serve the feminine it changes your whole mindset around what that looks like and what a dynamic can look like.
Oh, that's so interesting, and I'm loving that we're bringing to this to an episode, because we can actually then discuss this topic in so many different ways that allows anyone that is dabbling in feminine, masculine energies to be able to have a bit of a blueprint or a guidance system in being able to tap into that in a way that it actually serves them.
Yes. Yeah. And it's different for everyone. We see so much about feminine energy, but it's not always just the soft, flowy, go have a self-care day. A lot of it is balancing our feminine and masculine and having power in our feminine, knowing that we have self-worth. We are valuable just because we exist. We're the being, not the doing.
Completely. I couldn't agree more. I love that you've identified the being component. I think that in itself, and hand on heart, I get lost in that so frequently of just doing. But it's when we actually then stop and connect to self and our power within that we have so much growth happen.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's when you're discovering yourself and learning, what do I enjoy? What brings me passion? What brings me fulfillment? Instead of the day-to-day, we're stuck in the structure and, just the menial tasks of day-to-day, and stepping out of that super planned doing and just doing things that fulfill us.
Can you describe the most surprising lesson you've learned about yourself through your journey of empowerment?
I would say the biggest thing that I have embodied is just taking up my space and owning my presence, because I am 6 foot tall. And so it was always a very big insecurity of mine growing up, because I was I felt massive, right? And I was taller than all the boys. And this is actually interesting. Do you mind if I share a story?
Of course, please do.
Okay. My mom and I used to go shopping all the time when I was little. And recently, it was maybe 6 months ago, her and I went shopping together and I was looking at shoes. And I found this gorgeous pair of, I don't know, probably 3-inch wedges. And I'm comfortable wearing heels now. I did not used to be. And so I try them on and she looks at me and she's like, "Oh, you don't want those. You don't want to stand out."
Oh,
Everything clicked, and I was like, this is where all of my insecurity about being seen, about taking up my presence, about owning my space, that's where all of it came from, right? Because that was the environment I grew up in. And so it wasn't the comment that she made that, was hurtful. It was just the fact that I realized so much about how I was keeping myself small to make everyone else feel comfortable. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is truly owning my space, my presence, my energy.
And it's so common for us to have a moment where our heart is hurt or our world crumbles a little bit, for us to have that realization, to be like, wow, like this whole time, this is how I acted. This is what I believed. This is, the hurt I was also then putting upon myself because I didn't have that awareness. And as soon as that then gets brought to the forefront of our awareness, change can then from there happen. Our work can begin. Without awareness, we're just stuck in that, and that's why we sometimes call it the awakening, or, awareness in itself. It's that you are just this being that's going through the motions and being molded by your environment, and you perpetuate those belief systems as well. But as soon as you then start to connect to that ability to notice, curiosity, from there an individual can grow and exponentially.
Yeah, and then you can make those changes, right? And because so much of that is subconscious, you don't even realize that's how your thoughts are formed. You don't even realize you have those patterns. When it does come out, it's like, okay, well, now I can work through that. Now I can make those changes. Yes. Yeah.
You mentioned that through the work previously, you connected with women, and you naturally work with women as well. You help them connect to their feminine and sensual energy. What do you believe blocks women from fully embracing that part of themselves?
There's so much. And a lot of it starts from when we're young, right? It starts from the environment we're growing up in. I mean, when you think about the generation of our parents, it's vastly different than our generation now. And, things that were taboo, there was a lot of sexual repression. There was a lot of negative thoughts around that. I mean, I know my family is its own little, individual group, but we never spoke about anything to do with sex. It was just completely off the table. And so not even having an education, a discussion about it. It was just shoved under the rug, and it was just tucked away. And so I feel like a lot of us have shame and repression regarding that, just from growing up, and then looking at society, looking at, cultural expectations, and social media makes it difficult because we're all judging our bodies. We're all trying to figure out what's normal, what's acceptable, and just being able to express yourself sexually and openly is so difficult for women. We have so much pushback on every side.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's, when we look at feminine energy, it's so misunderstood and misrepresented. We when we look at that, we want to connect to intuition. We want to be nurturing. We want to be creative, and we want that all naturally to flow. Unlike the more assertive and structural kind of masculine energy, we want to acknowledge that feminine energy is so important in that ability to be in touch with our own emotions, our own nurturance. And I find through even my work, when I started to pull a little bit more of that within some of my practice with some of my clients, you then start to notice this, ability when women are able to embrace aspects of both their feminine and their masculine. There is that level of authenticity that then grows, and confidence that follows through that. We no longer are shameful of the masculine or the feminine within us. We're able to beautifully flow within the both. And it doesn't mean that just because you're a female or a woman, you have to be feminine, or, as soon as you then go into the masculine, that's all of a sudden a bad thing. Really, really stepping into both of these energies that, at times are going to serve you, are going to fulfill you, and then allow you to be your beautiful, authentic self, because it's supposed to be both. It's supposed to be both.
It is. Yeah, it is. And we need a balance, especially
Mm,
as, female entrepreneurs. Like, we also need to tap into that masculine energy so that we can run our business
completely.
and get things done and have, structure and alignment. But
Mm,
being able to open up to our feminine, because so much of our world is masculine and it's programmed around the masculine, right? It's our world is made for the male hormonal cycle. Our world is made for, how men are structured, not women. And so figuring out what works for you and being able to step outside of that box of this is how things are normally done, and saying, this is how
mm,
my energy works. This is how, I feel the most aligned. This is how I feel the most productive, and tapping into that feminine, because we do need both.
mm.
Yeah.
You started telling your story of how you started to come to awareness, and I know that stepping into authenticity requires significantly breaking away from those belief systems and norms that naturally we hold on to because we fear judgment and we fear, rejection, especially if there is like a self-worth, self-esteem kind of issue in the context of our upbringing. But how did you navigate perceived judgment and shame from self and from others as you started to then grow into yourself?
It was terrifying. And I say that because I know people can relate to it. And
Mm-hmm.
it absolutely was. I was doing feminine and sensual energetics for women, but I wasn't tapping into the dominatrix energy with that because I was so worried about what other people were going to think, and it's taboo. And I still have a pediatric therapy business, and so
Mm-hmm.
having both sides of that. And it was one evening I really sat down and I thought, what do I want from this? What do I see in my future? Well, I see myself
Mm-hmm.
teaching women to embody the presence and the self-worth and confidence of being a goddess, right? Owning their feminine energy, owning their goddess energy. And so that involves everything I've learned as a dominatrix. And I'm proud of that. And so
Mm-hmm.
figuring out, that's what I want it to look like. And am I really going to let the 4 people in my life who may potentially judge me stop me from living out my fulfillment and my purpose? And so when you
Mm-hmm.
really put it into perspective, it's usually just a couple people. It's not the whole world that is unsupportive. It's not the whole world that is going to judge you. And if they do, you're still living your purpose and your fulfillment, and it's okay.
Yeah.
I had to come to terms with also the potential of, losing my pediatric therapy clients. And that was also
Mm.
okay, because I know this is my journey. This is my passion, and all of that is going to work out. I trust in it. So whatever happens with
Mm-hmm.
that, I let it go. And I didn't hold on to the control of what specifically that would look
Mm. I loved that you highlighted there that, when we have this perceived notion of who's going to judge us or who's going to reject us, we genuinely, at times at the core, truly believe that it's going to be everyone
like.
about everything. And I love that you were able to clearly outline there for our community that it's sure there will be some people, but it's not everybody. And this is the beautiful thing. You are going to go through some shedding of people in your life, and that is going to be challenging and hard by coming closer and closer to the version of yourself that you want to be. And by doing so, you're also going to then pull your people that are going to align with the version of yourself that you are becoming.
Yes. Yeah. And the evolution of attracting the people that are meant for you, attracting the people that know the true you and your authenticity. Like, it's so freeing to know that all of the people that I am surrounded by know who I am to my deepest core. And it's not, they
Mm.
know a part of me, they like a part of me. No, they know who I am as a whole, and they love and accept.
Oh, that's so empowering to get to a point where you feel quite nestled in that and can see it through the connections of people around you. They're going to love you. And this is, I guess, the journey that we're wanting to explain to people, that the people that are your people are going to see you fully,
Mhm.
right? The amazing things about you, the things that you are ashamed of, the good, bad, and the ugly, they are going to see that, and they are still going to accept and love you as a whole person, because
Yeah.
those things are also things that make you who you are. And if you don't have people like that yet, potentially in your life, keep growing and doing the things that align with who you want to become, and those people are going to soon find their connection with you.
Yeah. Yeah, you will naturally bring that into your reality. You'll naturally attract them. And it goes the same way, right? Like those are people that also want to be attracting you because they're drawn to your energy. They're drawn to what you're doing and, who you are as a person. Yeah.
Completely. Completely. The role of a dominatrix often carries misconceptions. Can you explain the dynamics involved in how it relates to empowerment and energy?
Yes, I would love to. And I really enjoy giving people a different perception of it because typically what we see is, the standard whips and chains. And so how I view it, it's truly a therapeutic modality. So it's an energy exchange of the feminine and the masculine, and it's an energy exchange of dominant and submissive. And so what I love about being a dominatrix is that the masculine is serving the feminine. So for me, that looks like acts of service. It's called goddess worship. So they do tasks for me, anything to make me feel loved, adored, revered, just as a human being. And it's mutually fulfilling because they love being around a woman who is so anchored in her feminine energy. And it might not be the light feminine that we envision. It could be dark feminine, right? But just sitting on your throne as a queen, being served by the masculine is such incredible energy. Like, I wish every woman could feel that. That is my goal, that every woman can experience that, because it'll change your mindset around being in a dynamic with someone, being in relationships. And so it can involve the impact play and the physicality of it. But truly for me, it's about the energy exchange.
And it's so interesting that you've actually tapped into the fact that in the role of a dominatrix, you're not always needing to hold the masculine role. Where you can still, and this is, I think, even just my misconception about it too. It's this idea of, okay, well, if someone steps into that, they are fully masculine, tending to, let's say, the feminine energy of someone else, right? But I'm hearing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the dynamics that you can actually step into is that you empower yourself in continuing to be the feminine energy, within still being the dominatrix in that dynamic. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, it's so true. Yes. So I embody like my deepest sensual feminine energy. And so because the practice isn't sexual, but it's sensual, right? So I'm able to tap into my sensual energy and bring that out. And that's what's so enamoring for the men that serve me also, because they're just in this world of feminine and sensual, and I'm there for me, right? I'm not there to serve them. And it's the opposite. But yes, so we are tapping into our feminine, and it's structured, but the structure comes from setting boundaries, having self-respect, knowing that I'm worthy of being served, and just saying, this is what it is going to look like when you're in my presence. And so it doesn't need to be this aggressive, a lot of it looks mean and controlling, and it doesn't need to be any of that. You can be in your dark, feminine, sensual energy, and it's still this, very, it tends to be nurturing. Like, it's this very therapeutic, nurturing energy.
And I love that we're bringing it forward to, rip apart those misconceptions, because, we don't know what we don't know. And having conversations about usually taboo topics allows us to pull us into how we can step within our own parameters of, curiosity and exploration, and asking, ourselves what it is that is within our relational dynamics that might actually be preventing us from feeling safe and secured and fulfilled. And I think, while yes, this is in the role of a dominatrix, I want to pull it to like real world empowerment for women mostly, but for anyone. But it's really interesting that, the way that you described it, and I'm still, I think, in a level of like, I'm sorry, what? The beauty of it, and the ability to then actually pull that through into even the relationships that you have in real life without it being a dominatrix role, like per se,
Yes. Yeah. And so I love doing that professionally. I love being in that energy with men, but personally, I enjoy a traditional masculine feminine relationship. Like, I enjoy being submissive in my personal relationships. but I love being able to step into that dominant role. So it's nice because I can understand the perspective of a submissive. And so I know what they're going through because I can also be in that mindset, but then also being in a dominant role. So I feel like when you can understand both sides of that, it's so beneficial for relationships because I can understand when the masculine dominant role needs me to hold that space or that safety or to nurture them, and vice versa when I need to be more submissive and, you know, be in that more feminine role so that they can take the dominant role. And so understanding those dynamics is huge in relationships.
Completely. So on that, like how do you see power dynamics in your work as a dominatrix translating to real world empowerment?
I think it really helps when I'm getting to know people because I can see whether the dominance is coming from ego, whether it's coming from a place of trying to control or aggression, or when their dominance is coming from a place of security, a place of knowing that they hold this safe space. And so I am attracted to very masculine men, but masculine men that are able to hold emotional space for me, that are able to hold energetic space for me, and not just, you know, the very controlling, aggressive masculine that we think of. So I feel like it helps me that way. And then just out and about, I'm able to hold my boundaries. I know my self-worth and, you know, I am very selective about environments and people that I engage with.
And that actually brought up a concept that we do very much struggle with out there in the world, is this idea of, you know, masculinity, and so much out there is around toxic masculinity, and masculinity in itself is so negative. It's there needs to be a balance, and we need to be looking at what positive masculinity looks like and how having a partner, you know, who is positively masculine actually allows, and I know this happens, you know, in my relationship and so many relationships of my friends or even clients at times, if there is a positively masculine partner, you as the woman are so much more inclined to step into your feminine and actually feel protected, feel nurtured, cared for. And one, I feel especially, and I'm sharing this from a personal perspective, being a woman who has businesses and runs so much and is under so much pressure, it's only natural for me to be in my masculine majority of the time. And then when you step into a relationship where you can let that go and you are beautifully held by somebody else being masculine and you can actually step into your feminine, that's where I personally, and I'm going to share this, that's where a lot of my healing has actually happened.
Yes.
Because I've been able to let go of all of my coping mechanisms, all of the things that naturally create this, you know, control of masculine energy. And we don't actually talk about that. We don't actually, you know, freely bring that to the surface of, by having masculine positive energy around you, you yourself can step into a feminine, and that's where you grow. That's where you are nurtured and the best parts of you just beautifully come out.
Yes. That is so beautiful. And I love that for you. I am genuinely so happy that you experienced that, because a lot of women don't experience that, and being held safely by the masculine. And that's huge. Like, we need healthy masculine energy just as much as we need healthy feminine energy. And when the masculine is able to hold that safe space for you, that's where we're in our optimal feminine energy. That's where we're creating, we're multiplying, we're bringing abundance, we're nurturing, because we don't have to spend our energy on keeping a safe space. We don't have to spend our energy on controlling everything and providing. We can spend our energy on the beautiful, nurturing, flowing parts of ourselves. And it's incredible. And that's the balance it was meant to be. And we've gotten so far out of balance to where each side is doing the opposite. And it's not where we work best. And so truly finding that in a relationship is beautiful. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. And I just want to say to everyone, like, you know, I've been married for close to 12 years, been with my husband for, he's going to kill me if he doesn't. He always knows, I totally forget. For a very long time. We've known each other for like 25 years. But I guess what I'm saying is there were moments in our relationship where he was way too masculine and not in a positive way, and I was too masculine, or he, didn't want to step into any of his femininity and I didn't want to let go of my masculine. Like there was so many dynamic issues through our evolvement of the relationship. While I can safely say at the moment we found a really beautiful balance, that's years and years of, vulnerability and openness and trial and error and all that kind of stuff. So as I was sharing that, I just want to gently remind people that I'm, when I'm sharing that, it's not just off the bat. It is genuine hard work to get to, but it is so worth it when you are able to have someone that's able to be workable and you feel safe to push those parameters and those parts of yourself to step into this beautiful balance that can actually then happen. And I'm not saying that it's a beautiful balance all the time. Let's be real. Like I mentioned, I step into my masculine so quickly, and sometimes I'm needing to be forced out of that to actually step back into my feminine. So I just want to kind of normalize that it's not so beautifully perfect, but yes, I do very much feel very grateful and fortunate to have found someone that is able to do the work with me.
Well, and we change and we fluctuate, and our energy levels change and fluctuate too. So just like hormonal cycles and everything, our feminine, masculine energy is going to sway one way or the other. But there was something that you touched on that I wanted to bring up too, because you were talking about how, you're a business owner and you feel like you're in your masculine energy a lot. And when you go home, it's nice to let that go. It's nice to let go of the control and, just be able to be soft and flow. And so there's something fascinating about my work as a dominatrix, because that is why most men come to me, because they are typically very masculine alpha entrepreneurs and they make a billion decisions a day. And they want a point in time where it's a blank slate, where they don't have to think about anything. They're not controlling anything. There's nothing going on in their brain other than what a feminine is asking them to do. And so we all want that space. We all want a time where we can just let go and have someone hold that for us. And I feel like...
Oh, completely.
Yeah, I feel like that gets so overlooked in the industry and just being a dominatrix in general, right? Because you have to be strong enough to hold that space for a man to want to give that to you. To where, okay, I'm giving you everything, I'm letting go, and I know you can hold it. I know you can control that. Yeah.
And I love that you've been able to pull it away from just the intimacy and the sex. There's just such a deep layer, like you said, a therapeutic layer of connection and support that also then happens in that dynamic that is so misrepresented.
Yeah. Yeah. And my practice isn't even sexual. It's sensual, right? But it's not even sexual. And I feel like that's also a very big misconception, because most of it is
completely
what people see in adult film, right? And it's not that at all.
No, completely. And talking about misconceptions, what other misconceptions are there about dominant submission and power that you've encountered in your line of work?
People are shocked that I am kind and warm and empathetic. Most people have this idea and vision of a dominatrix as just being a very cold, removed person. And so they're shocked when they meet me in person. They're like, wow, I'm really drawn to your personality. And I'm like, yeah, it's not just this persona. So I feel like that's another big misconception, is people think it's a persona that you put on, but truly it's just my feminine coming out. Like, she feels safe just to take up her space and sit on her throne and feel worthy that men should be serving her. And it's not this alternate personality of mine. It's just embodying my true feminine energy.
And that energy, as we know, can show up in different ways in different formats, right? Because what you're describing is you're still tapping into feminine energy, and you're giving an example of what it is in your personal life with a partner versus then what it is when you're engaging in the role of a dominatrix. They're both feminine energy. They're just showing up in different ways, because as we look at feminine energy, there's definitely like the spectrum of that too, right? It's still within the framework of feminine energy, but and that's why I guess I liked that you also highlighted there that it's not like split personalities, or it's not like, you know, different parts of you. It's kind of the same, that it's just ebbing and flowing gently in the different roles that you're engaging in.
Yeah, and it feels like play, you know, it just feels freeing. And, you know, one of those realms is very dark feminine, and then my personal realm is very soft feminine. And it's so free to play in those. And, you know, what do I feel like today?
I love that. Welcome to Self-Reflections, real people, real reflections. Whatever you're carrying, you don't have to do it alone. We're not just your average service. A space to come home to yourself one session at a time. A sanctuary where you feel seen, heard, and held. We meet you where you are, online or in person. Providing support across the lifespan from little ones to adults. Nurturing your mind, body, and relationships. Real people, real reflections. Book now at selfreflections.com. Hilary, why do you believe connecting with sensual energy is so vital for women's empowerment?
So our sensual energy is truly where we get our power to create abundance, the reality that we're living in, because we have that. We are inherently born with the feminine power of creating, and that comes from our sensual energy. And so most of us are so detached from that, and we feel like our lives are out of our control. Like we feel like we were put in these situations, these relationships, we were handed, you know, we were dealt this deck of cards, and that's just what our life looks like. But when you're able to realize you have the power to change that, it's transformational to know that you, just by tapping into your sensual energy, you can change the type of person that you attract. You can change your situation. You can, you know, evolve your environment. And so, but all of that comes from tapping into that.
Okay, so on that, how do you then guide women to embrace their sensuality without, especially actually now that I'm thinking about it, without feelings of guilt or shame?
So there's a couple things that I love to do, but a lot of it starts with mirror work. It is shocking how many of us women are uncomfortable just looking at ourselves in the mirror. Just looking at yourself, telling yourself positive affirmations, being accepting and loving of your body, being accepting and loving of the way you look. Like all of that comes down to self-worth and your confidence. And so mirror work is huge. And then I do a lot of sensual embodiment movement. And so I'll also do this in front of the mirror, but if that's uncomfortable at first, it's just putting on spicy music, or it can be tantra, or whatever gets you into moving your body, but just moving your body in a sensual way, not for anybody else, just for you. Tapping into that, like loving your body, showing her that, you know, she is loved, she is worthy, thanking your body for everything that she's doing for you. And I say it that way because I feel like we get so trapped in, you know, this is just what I look like, you know, I can't change this. And people get very down about that. And so knowing that, like, if you envision your body as a friend of yours, would you tell her that she's not worthy? Would you tell her she's not pretty? Would you tell her she's overweight? No, right? You would want to boost her up. And so thinking about it that way, that's why I describe our body as she and what she's doing for us. But yes, so sensual embodiment is huge, just being able to move your body.
I love that you've identified sensuality as not merely about sexuality, and that it is about being fully present and connected to your own body and emotions. When we kind of reframe that also to add to what you were mentioning, in our kind of like psych world, it's really tied to a sense of presence and mindfulness. And I loved the term that you used there, embodiment. right, practices, because what we find is when women reconnect with their senses and they ground themselves in the present moment, it enhances their emotional regulation and self-awareness. When we look at that, and the reason why we want to work on embracing or empowering that for women, this reconnection actually fosters things like confidence, it reduces anxiety, it encourages positive self-image, and it's not something that, you know, after one exercise you all of a sudden have this self-love that's never been there before. Obviously, it is a very slow and gentle process. It actually, like, being able to embrace sensuality, what I'm hearing, allows women to reclaim their narrative, that it really starts to break away the shame that has been bestowed upon the society and environments that we've been exposed to, and actually allows us to step into a version of ourselves that through these practices we start to get to know. And I love that you have actually identified that at first it's for nobody's benefit but it's nobody's benefit but our own. And that, I think, is such a safe way to start engaging in this type of growth, because a lot of the time we're exposed and we're asked to do it out there, you know, in everyone's view, where this is just for you in your own personal time, in the way that feels natural and safe and gentle.
Yeah. And, you know, I was just having a conversation about this the other day, because as women, most of our sexual experiences growing up are tied to someone else, are tied to a male, right? Yeah. Even as teenagers, young adults, completely, whatever that looks like. And we never got to experience it for ourselves. In my mind, it always just kind of belonged to someone else. You know, it was always for someone else. And so being able to reframe that, like, your sensuality, your sexuality is for you and for you to experience. And you can use that in whatever way you want, whether it's pleasure, whether it's creating, just being able to step into that energy for you and not doing it for the purpose or, you know, the pleasure of someone else.
Oh, I love that. Can you, Hilary, share a success story of a client who reclaimed her power by reconnecting with her sensual energy, if one comes to mind?
Yes. So I had a client, so she did tap into her sexual energy, but it wasn't so much in a, like, improved her relationship kind of way, but she started a business. She got her self-image on track, right? Like, she started working out, she, you know, started nutrition. And so she was feeling incredible about her body. And so then now she's doing meditation work, she's doing sensual embodiment, she's doing all of these practices to ground herself, to be present. And so, yeah, she lost, I believe it was 60 or so pounds, feels great about her body, loves the way she looks in clothes now. And she started 2 businesses. So she's a therapist as well. And then she started a creative business. And so, like, she has brought in so much abundance and so much creativity just by tapping into that. And it wasn't even in a sexual relationship way. These were just things for herself.
Mm-hmm. And we're not here promoting weight loss as the, you know, answer to happiness. However, what I am hearing, though, is when we start looking at how we have treated our body, that results in feelings of discomfort, lack of confidence, shame, and we start then changing the way that we treat ourselves in our body. Things like, yes, what we put into it, how we use it, you know, how we nurture it, all of those things come into play. So things like movement, the way that we dress comes into play, how much effort we actually put into our appearance, not for anybody else, but actually there, you know, and hand on heart, there are times where I know that my body suffers because I mistreat it, you know. Those are the weeks where I know I don't wash my hair, or it's always up in a bun, or I actually just don't even bother to put any effort into my attire, you know, and that it's this compounding impact of, you know, sluggishness that then really, really impacts your self-worth and confidence. And I, hand on heart, my friends and my husband can see when my own confidence and self-worth starts to diminish. It's when all of these things compound and they all influence each other. So I love that you've brought that within the client success story, because it highlights that responsibility and ownership of us then making small little changes that naturally is going to undo the way that we've been treating ourselves, to genuinely see value in our body, in our worth. And if we then pair that with, I'm deserving of good food, I am deserving of movement, I am deserving of rest, I am actually deserving of taking a shower and brushing my hair and putting on fresh clothes on my body, that is a perpetuating thing that will then only reinforce that I am worthy of receiving. Yeah. And that naturally builds more worth and confidence and so forth and so on. As a byproduct for your client, weight did come off her body. But at the same time, it's not that that is the only solution. It's that if we treat our mind and our body as if it is of value, you're going to start to feel of value.
Yes. And I love the way you phrase that. And yes, it's not that weight loss is specifically the goal, but it's she prioritized herself and she started loving herself enough to go do the things that she had wanted to do that she didn't feel like she could before. And so now she's able to prioritize time for meditation. She wanted to, be able to get in movement and fitness. So she was able to prioritize time for that. And it was making that change for herself, saying, I am worth doing that for, and I want to make a change, whatever that looks like. So yes, that self-love.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And you know what? And again, I'm sharing a lot in this episode, surprisingly. I never usually do, but for some reason you're bringing that out in me today.
I love that.
There are moments where even within my own experience, there are moments where even the way that I walk can bleed that I'm not feeling confident, right? But as you then do these things for yourself, you walk out of the house, head held high, you're nice, your body posture changes, you're just, facing the world. And there's this ooze of, confidence that this energy that's just oozing out of you that people notice. And it's not because you're doing it because you want them to notice. You're doing it because there are days where you're going to have that, and naturally you're going to have days where all you want is for nobody to look at you because you don't want to look at you. So it's this beautiful ebbing and flowing of the experience, and I know what it feels like, and I want to highlight that to normalize that for people. I know what it feels like to leave your house and not feel very kind about yourself and not feel very empowered or confident. And I also know the days where, I feel like I can take on the whole world and I feel really confident. And that then bleeds into how sensual you then become, right, in your relationships. Because the more confident you are, the more worth you think you have, the more you're going to then be sensual in your close relationships, in at times a platonic way, and then mostly in those romantic relationships,
Yeah. And when you think about just the confidence, having the confidence to be sensual, having the confidence to own your space and have a presence. And like you're talking about, when you're walking out of the door with your head high and your shoulders up, it's presence, right? And it's knowing that I am worthy, I am valuable, I'm taking up my space. And it's not for other people to recognize that. It's just knowing that internally. And so when you're able to do that just in daily life, imagine what that looks like in your relationships and how much your partner perceives that. And that's so exciting for your partner to know she's happy, she's fulfilled, she's excited to be here, she's confident, she loves herself. That's so juicy.
Well, and it completely changes the dynamic, doesn't it? Right? It's so natural when you're not feeling like that within yourself, you get disconnected with your partner. And then when you are feeling that within yourself, it then connects you back together, And it's not to say, all your problems are, that's the fault of all the problems. No. It's the natural ebb and flow of the connectedness and the disconnection that occurs in our relationships.
Yeah, that's totally true. And just like the ebb and flow of our feminine and masculine energy, and some days you might be more dominant, some days you might be more submissive, and it's okay. It's a scale.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about your journey of empowerment, because naturally being an OT, juggling being an OT and a professional dominatrix, you're empowered in different ways in each of these roles. How do you manage that in your day to day, having, I guess, the different versions of yourself that you play in these different roles? roles?
It's interesting because I feel like I'm able to tap into so many parts of myself. Like as an OT, I'm tapping into my very nurturing, my very, I wouldn't say parental, but it's a motherly energy, because I'm working them through so many things to help them with their daily lives. And so tapping into that and then tapping into my dark feminine where I'm sitting in my throne and men are serving me. I feel like it's given me such an incredible perspective of feminine energy and like what that can look like and how many things you can impact the world with. Like I am impacting children in their daily lives, and I am also impacting men and giving them the space and reduced anxiety. And it's so incredible to know how many spaces we can hold as women. And so I feel like that's a lot of where the empowerment came from too, because I work with a lot of women who are mothers. And so they're like, well, so much of my energy and time is wrapped up in being a mom. I don't have time to be the sensual, fun, flirty wife, the time or the energy or the idea of what that even feels like anymore. And so it's being able to kind of be both in those roles and knowing that there is space for them, but we just have to prioritize ourselves and be able to make them.
And with that, naturally, I understand there would be quite some boundaries that you have to keep. How do you keep with? I know when it comes to Australia, there are very, very strict rules and regulations as professionals we have to follow. How do you navigate through these roles where I know we can just say boundaries, but how do you navigate with these roles being so different?
So legally, they're separate businesses, right? So it would be akin to me just having my personal life and say I like to go out to, different places on the weekend or whatever. So legally, that's what it looks like. And personally, I schedule those things on different days because it's very hard for me to be in the mindset of the mothering and the nurturing and helping kids through therapy and then being my dark feminine being served. And so I block out days to where, okay, here's my therapy day. Here is my, I'm helping women work through these things day. And then here are my days where, I'm open to men serving me. So I have to block it out that way because otherwise it would be just too energetically exhausting to move back and forth between them. Yeah.
And I guess that's a beautiful way of boundaries in action, right? You've set yourself up these time constraints, and those are boundaries. You're able to then negotiate what happens and which clients see you on what days. Again, that's a beautiful, I guess, representation of boundaries in different ways.
It has been life-saving. At first I started, it was very chaotic because I had all these things on different days and I was in these different mindsets and I was like, this is crazy. So it's much more structured and aligned.
I love that. What role does vulnerability play in empowerment, and how do you balance vulnerability and strength in your journey?
So initially it was very hard for me to tap into being vulnerable. So in 2020, I got divorced, and that's when I started my practice. I started my dominatrix journey. And so I was very much in my masculine energy then. And it was very hard for me to be vulnerable. I was much more disconnected with my clients and all my businesses, but especially as a dominatrix, because I felt like I had to hold the control. I had to hold that masculine energy because I didn't feel safe. And there was no way that I was going to be vulnerable with my clients. And they could feel that, right? People feel that when you're not open with them. And so there was a disconnect there. And so I feel like my vulnerability has kind of evolved and grown to where now I can speak about what I do and I can put that out there and be vulnerable about it. And I love it. And just like we were talking about earlier, it's attracting the right people to me. It's attracting the people that say, I see all of you. I love and accept that. And, I want to spend time with you, whatever that looks like. And so it is hard though. And a small tangent. So that vulnerability is very difficult for me in relationships now because I'm always upfront about what I do as a dominatrix. And so a lot of times people hear that and they have their, perception of it. And so it turns them off to a relationship without understanding truly, what the meaning and purpose of it is. And so I love that I can be vulnerable now. I love that I'm comfortable with it and I want people to know the real me, but it's also that initial perception that can be an issue. Yeah.
And I love that you've been able to also share the reality of that too. And I actually some of my clients are in and around, you know, the industry in different ways and find the same challenges where they try and be open and honest and vulnerable, and it doesn't then get held in a really nurturing way for them too. So it's quite challenging to then move into establishing a safe connection with someone in a romantic relationship in their personal life. And when we look at vulnerability, and I say this often in my episodes, we know that vulnerability is often perceived as weakness, but in reality it's a profound source of strength. And when we are vulnerable, that's where we are courageous, that's where we can be creative, that's where we can create the biggest connection with those around us. And I find that when, as women, we embrace vulnerability, it's kind of, in a way, as women, it's expected that we're more comfortable with being vulnerable than men. I'm not saying that, but let's be real. I hate being vulnerable, and I'm a woman. And I very much like push away from it. So when I ask my clients to be vulnerable, I'm like, oh, there's the kettle calling the whatever the thing is. But, I'm like, oh, okay. But when us women embrace vulnerability, we really give ourselves permission to be authentic, to dismantle expectations. And that is what leads to genuine confidence and power. It's not from a place of dominance. It's not from a place of control, but from a level of acceptance and integrity. And if we're gently balancing what vulnerability looks like to us, and then that with this empowerment, we can actually, as women, redefine what it means to be truly powerful, and what it means to come into versions of ourselves with that power.
Yeah. And there was something that you touched on. So I feel like for men, being vulnerable is seen as weakness. And so that's why they resist it. And I feel like for women, being vulnerable is safety, right? So there's like two different things there, because us is, if I'm vulnerable, if I share this with you, are you going to be able to safely hold this for me? Or is it going to be something that's used against me in a negative way, right? There's all those questions about it. And for men, it's seen as weakness. Well, I don't want to tell her this because then she'll think I'm weak or soft or whatever that is. And so it is challenging to be vulnerable, but I feel like so much of that comes from just trust and security in knowing who you are, because I know that when I'm vulnerable and I share that with someone, I'm okay whether they accept it or not. And I'm not looking for validation. I'm not looking for approval. And if they don't accept it, that's okay, because they're not the person for me. And so being able to hold that safety for myself and not put it in someone else's control has been huge.
Thank you for sharing that, and I couldn't agree more. And you're right. I think even as I'm reflecting on my own vulnerability, it feels yucky, because I think a part of my masculine is saying that is weakness, and then my feminine is, am I going to be made to feel bad for being vulnerable or guilty, or is it going to be rejected? And I think both of them for me personally are playing, it's either this or this. And so therefore sometimes naturally facade goes up. We keep people at arm's length. We don't let them in. We don't open up, and more problems then come from that, So, and it's just acknowledging that we're all beautifully human, and that's naturally what we all have to kind of work through gently. What are the most common challenges you or other women face when stepping into their power, and how have you or other women overcome them?
I would say one of my biggest challenges has been pushback from society, from people who are not on the same wavelength, people who are not on the same vibration. And it's a lot of, well, who do you think you are to, have men serving you? You really think, you're really full of yourself. You're all that. And I hear a lot of that. And I feel like it's coming from a lot of insecurity of people not having self-worth, not having that confidence. And so they're projecting that. And so just being able to hold that for myself and I am worthy of being served. I am worthy of the reality I've created. I am worthy of being loved. All of that has really helped me work through any of the pushback, but even just in setting boundaries, I have had to set boundaries in how I spend time with specific family members and what that looks like. And that's hard. Family is one of the most difficult people for us to be able to set and hold boundaries with. And so just knowing that these things are going to be difficult and you are going to get some pushback, but knowing that you're worth holding that space, you're worth holding those boundaries, and you're worth the treatment that you want to receive.
And that's such a beautiful thing for our community, especially, women who are finding it really difficult to believe that. I encourage you, rewind back and re-listen to that. And rewind back and re-listen to that, because it's so easy for us to have our inner dialogue that is saying everything but. So finding people in your environment or listening to audios or something that is just going to be the replacement to that until that becomes your voice internally is so important. So I thank you so much for being able to actually, give us these little segments of something that we can take away and keep repeating to ourselves over and over again.
Yeah, and I love what you were sharing before about the realness of all of this. And I have 3 businesses. I'm a professional dominatrix. I teach women, confidence and self-love, but that doesn't mean that we don't all struggle with these things and that we don't all have these challenges.
Course.
And I have so much pushback in society because of what I'm saying and what I'm doing and trying to empower women. And it's okay. It's okay. You can still hold that space for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Hilary, looking back on your journey, what would you say to your younger self who may have been struggling with identity and authenticity issues?
Oh my gosh, there are so many things that I would say to my younger self. I would tell her to own her space and to stand tall, first and foremost. Just knowing that you deserve to take up the space that you hold, you deserve to be loved. And I would also tell her that the things that make you unique, that make you feel weird, the things that are outside of the box from everyone else are what's going to bring you the most passion, the most joy, the most fulfillment, and it's what's going to attract your people to you. So embodying those things, owning those things, and playing in it, having fun.
That's so important. I've actually been doing a lot of inner work with my clients for the longest time because I work from a schema therapy perspective. So child work and inner work is super, super important in especially healing and growing and taking care of our needs. But what you identified there is that sense of playfulness, and we forget as we grow up, play and spontaneity is one of our core emotional needs that was pivotal to our survival when we were young. It is just as important now as it will be when we're 80, 90 years old. Yeah. We forget that. And what you were just mentioning there is this connection to this part of you that is still wanting to play, that is still wanting to have fun and be spontaneous. And that is something that we want us as adults to connect to. And if you don't know what that looks like for you, that's okay. Grab a journal or a paper, doesn't matter what, and start writing out what are some of the things that do bring you a little bit of fun and spontaneity and cheekiness. And if that's still hard to do, that's okay. Go connect with a coach, a counselor, psychologist that is going to help create that connection to that spontaneity and fun that is so important for us to feel fulfilled, for us to actually tap into parts of ourselves that are so deserving of a life that is partially, adult-like and serious, but has to have components of playfulness and spontaneity and fun.
Yeah. And we forget that. We forget to
completely
have fun. We forget that we can have these big dreams. We forget that we can go play in that. And those are some of my most favorite memories. And to be honest, it's been in past relationships where I was held so securely by healthy masculine energy that I was able to be my freest, most fun-loving self. Like literally my inner 7-year-old was coming out and she was just dancing and wild and free and safe and loved. And it is the most beautiful feeling. Yeah.
That's so special that you've been able to experience that.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Hilary, what do you hope listeners take away from your story about embracing feminine energy and empowerment?
I hope women take away that you are worthy just because you exist, not because of what you do for anyone else, not because of what your life looks like, not because of your family situation. You are worthy just because you exist, and you have inherent feminine power within you. You didn't lose it. It's there. You just need to connect to it.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And for those curious about exploring their sensual energy or embracing their authentic self, what are some of the first steps they can take?
So my first favorite exercise is to journal the things that you do for yourself and only you. So making a list of these are the things I do for my joy, my pleasure, my fun. And you will be shocked at how difficult it is to come up with things that you're not doing for your husband or things you're not doing for your kids just solely for you. So figuring that out, and again, prioritizing the fun and the spontaneity and making time for yourself, even just once a week, to go do one of those things, whether it's finding time to meditate or go for a walk by yourself, or we picture the whole self-care days and stuff, but it could just be lighting some candles and turning on some music and doing a sensual dance for 20 minutes. And so prioritizing time for yourself. And then once you get comfortable with that and you're tapping into your feminine energy, then you can do it more often, but just to start out.
Hilary, your journey of empowerment and authenticity is truly inspiring. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and reflections with us today.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to be on with you.
For our community, as always, thank you for tuning into the Self Reflections podcast. If you found value in today's episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below to share your thoughts. I will, of course, leave all of Hilary's details down below. If you'd like to connect with her, head on down to the description below. And if there are any questions that you're curious about, please leave a comment and Hilary and I will be able to reconnect. We might even do a future episode. So please don't hesitate to send your questions in the comments below. And as always, until next time, take care and keep reflecting.